When you decide to create a Squarespace website and you're checking out all the templates, it's very easy to fall in love with one that looks awesome. So you'll pick the template and you'll start editing the content, and pretty soon you'll realize how much time it takes to actually make this website uniquely yours. So in this episode, I wanted to share 5 of my favorite time-saving editing tips that will make it even easier for you to edit your Squarespace website and get that new content launched even faster. Welcome to Think Inside the Square, a podcast full of quick tips and tricks that will help you create a Squarespace website that you're proud of. I'm your host, Becca Harpain, creator of InsideTheSquare.co, and in this episode, you'll learn some of my favorite time-saving tips for editing the content of your Squarespace website. For a transcript of this episode, along with the links to any resources mentioned, visit InsideTheSquare.co/podcast. The term Squarespace is a trademark of Squarespace Incorporated. This content is not affiliated with Squarespace Incorporated. I want to start this episode by sharing 2 of my favorite text editing tips. As a gal with over 300 blog posts, I create a lot of text content on my website, so these time-saving tips make a big difference for me. The first text-related time-saving tip is great for text that you're copying from one program to the next. Like Notion to Squarespace, you can move over the characters by themselves without the formatting. It's called posting as plain text, and the only data that's moved over is the character. You won't pull anything extra, like heading styles, highlight colors, or links. You can then style the characters using the program itself. So how do you do this? When you copy content from the original program and you're ready to paste it into Squarespace, hold Control-Shift-V on a PC or Shift-Option-Command-V on a Mac. What I want you to do is highlight all the text you want to copy over in whatever program you're in. If you're on a Mac, press Command-C on your keyboard to copy it. And then when you're in Squarespace, inside a text editing block, I want you to press Shift-Option-Command-V to paste all of the characters, none of the formatting. For a PC, that's Control-C to copy it and Control-Shift-V to paste it. Another text-related editing tip is the soft return. If you don't want a full line break, hit Shift-Enter on your keyboard for a soft return. This is super helpful if you want to add a new line to an area that doesn't allow for a lot of space, or if you've added custom code to that text block because it keeps it in the same block. I used a soft return to put 2 lines on my announcement bar that are close together, only separated by the line height and not a full return. Now, if you're working in a blog post and you hit Enter or Return on your keyboard, Squarespace is going to separate that text block into 2 blocks of content, which could mess up any custom code that you have being applied to that individual text block. But if you use a soft return, holding down Shift when you press Enter or Return on your keyboard, you'll get a line break, but the text will still be in the same block. Again, that's called a soft return. The next editing tip I wanted to share is specifically about fluid engine sections. This one is huge for these responsive sites we're building with Squarespace. When you align a content block to the edge, it will always stick to the edge, no matter what screen size someone is using. If you align it to the middle horizontally, it will stay in the middle, no matter what screen size someone is using. Pretty interesting, right? With devices changing so often, this is an important Squarespace-specific editing content to know about. The next tip I wanted to share is also about fluid engine sections. And honestly, it's just a little-known feature, not necessarily a tip. It's called internal alignment. When you're editing a content block, like an image set to fit and not fill, you have the option to align it left, right, or middle horizontally. Another example is an accordion block. There's going to be a little padding in this block. If you click on the accordion block, you'll notice right next to that little editing icon pencil, you'll see an arrow that points to align. You can align this accordion block inside the content to the top, center, or middle of the content block. That's called internal alignment, and it's a feature not a lot of people know about. The other thing I want to mention about this feature is that you can change it for mobile versus desktop, which I think is really interesting. You can have the desktop version aligned to the top, where the mobile version is aligned to the bottom, something that can really change the way a layout looks on different devices. My final time-saving tip is also about devices, and it's how blog post content or any classic editor content stacks on mobile screens. This also applies to additional product details. If you have multiple columns of content, like 2 content blocks side by side, the left will be displayed first on mobile. So for example, if you have a video on your blog and then some more details or a description, Decide what you want people to see first when they look on that page on a mobile device, and make sure that is in the left column. We just covered a lot, so let's do a quick recap before I call this episode a wrap. The first tip that I shared with you was about editing text, and it's called pasting as plain text. When you copy characters from one program over to Squarespace and you want to remove all the formatting like headers or links or anything else, you just want the characters, copy that text in the original program, and when you're editing in Squarespace, I want you to press Control-Shift-V if you're on a PC, and Shift-Option-Command-V if you're on a Mac. You'll get all the characters, none of the formatting. The next tip I had for you was the soft return. If you want to create a line break in a blog post, but you don't want to have two different content blocks, what you can do is press Shift Return or Shift Enter on your keyboard, and you'll get a soft return. That will keep the content in the same content block, but still give you that space. My third editing tip was about fluid engine sections. If you align content to the edge, the top or the bottom, the left or the right, that content will stick to that edge no matter what screen size someone is using. And if you align it in the middle, horizontally, it will stay in the middle of the screen, no matter what screen size they're using. Tablet, mobile, doesn't matter. The fourth tip was also about fluid engine sections, and that talked about internal alignment. If you click on a content block, next to the edit icon, you'll see a little arrow that points to align. You can align the internal content here to the top, middle, or bottom. And if you're working with an image set to fit or fill, you can align it left, center, or right. Those can be adjusted on desktop separately from mobile, giving you a little bit more flexibility in the layout. Now, my final time-saving tip was about devices. If you're working with multiple columns of content in a blog post or additional product details, the left column is going to be displayed first on mobile. All right, we covered a lot. Thank you so much for listening to this full episode of Think Inside the Square. I have a lot more tips and tricks to share with you about making an amazing Squarespace website that's uniquely yours. So be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you happen to be listening to this episode. And if you enjoyed these tips, I would love it if you gave me a review. I'm still pretty new to this podcast game here. This is only episode number 14, so I would appreciate it if you'd pop in there and give me a review to make sure other Squarespacers are going to see this content. I want to reach as many Squarespacers as I can with all the helpful tips I've got to share. Thank you again for listening. And most importantly, have fun with your Squarespace website. Bye for now.